This is a better way. Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Thank you for always listening. Now, I want you to think about one person that you really like, and someone else that you maybe don't like so much or you outrightly dislike. And then, one question that I would like you to answer as you're listening to the podcast is, why do I really like this person? Or why do I dislike this person? Now, does that sound familiar? If you have maybe any of that, or you have this, or you've done this, or you've practiced this exercise. Now, one thing that is quite common is the fact that at some point in time, the person you like did something that made you like them, or the person you dislike did something that made you dislike them. Let me take a typical example. Let's say you meet someone for the very first time at a restaurant and you guys just exchange pleasantries, and then the person just said something and you're like, "Oh, I like this person. I really like this person." Maybe it's how the person thinks or what the person said or even the perfume the person was wearing or their outfit, something. And let's put that side by side with someone you probably just met or you sat beside on the plane and you're like, "I don't like this person." And for the entire duration of the flight, you were quite miserable. What is probably happening is a cognitive distortion called selective obstruction. What exactly is selective obstruction, right? Let's dive right into it, shall we? So, selective obstruction is what we psychologists and psychotherapists call a cognitive distortion. It is the way our mind really plays tricks on us into what oftentimes is faulty thinking pattern. Take for example, we block out a larger picture, and most times this is at the root of failed relationships, and I'm talking about romantic relationships, business relationships, and the list can go on and on and on. You know why? Because we take a simple part and we qualify the whole with it. We do not look at the bigger picture. Take for example, you have a boss at the office, right? And the boss is hard on you. Maybe you were supposed to, deliver a report and you missed the deadline, and then the boss scolded you and you're like, "I don't like this person." Or maybe somebody that, in the office just maybe walked past you that day and didn't say hello, or haven't said hello, maybe in a couple of days back to back, and you're like, ah, "I don't think this person likes me." Or you probably maybe took a test or you sat for an exam and you failed one particular course. And then you're like, "I think I'm a failure." Now, the danger is that there is a heavy sense of exaggeration in those statements I just said. Because if you go back and think about it, you will notice that, you know, you there is a pattern of qualifying a whole with just a path. Selective distortion is looking at something through the eye of a needle. I want you to think about it. I want you to imagine the eye of a needle and looking at the word through the eye of that needle. And this is how we often make decisions around who we choose to love and who we choose not to be in a relationship with, for example. Now, let's step into the brain for a moment. What exactly is happening in the brain when all of this is happening? Our brain evolved to pay more attention to threats than to neutral or positive experiences. That's why criticism sticks longer than compliments, or why bad memories feel more powerful than good ones. Now, the truth is that another reason is that there's cognitive what efficiency. Our mind likes shortcuts. There is something called the basal ganglia in the brain. It is the part that is responsible for automation. For example, when you are doing something and you've done that thing repeatedly over a period of time, you don't have to consciously think about it before you can do it. This is where your automatic driving skills come from? Think about the first time you're trying to drive a car and the times you drove after that time, right? It's the basal ganglia that is responsible for that. And that is your brain really, really working. Our minds like shortcuts. It's easier to define a person by one event than to do the hard work, really, of holding, you know, the possibility that there may be another side to this person or the complexity of this person's character. Take, for example, think about it. It's easy for you to say, oh, that guy is a selfish guy. That lady, she is materialistic. That guy is rude. That guy is too proud. That's very simple. It's easier. It's the most easy thing to do. But the truth, however, remains that sometimes, right, this person is not who you say he or she is, right? Because this person in that moment is probably in an unresourceful state. Now, in psychology, people can be in two kinds of states at every single time. They can either be in resourceful states or in unresourceful states. Most times, when people are in unresourceful states, they make bad decisions and they leave bad impressions, right? But the fact that this person acted selfishly when they were probably stressed, or maybe they were hard pressed or something, right? There is a possibility that if you care to check or investigate or analyze or even double check, this person is probably kind in other situations and in other areas. The problem is that these shortcut distortions, which is the selective distortion I spoke about, narrows down truth to fragments. It takes a part and it qualifies it as a whole. Take, for example, right? Imagine you text a friend and they don't reply you, or they something happens and they don't come back to you, or you ask someone for cash and the person says, I don't have, right? Now, selective distortion is the ability for your brain to rush to a particular conclusion that, oh, this person doesn't like me, or this person is quite stingy. So, when we continue in this particular direction, what really happens is that one, our relationships begin to suffer. Now, let me give you a typical example. One of the most popular causes of breakdown in relationships or romantic relationship is narrowed down to selective obstruction. Now, you met this person, you're head over heels about this person. You are qualifying the entirety of your relationship that is going to span over maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 years by just a few moments of the things that this person said. Now, let me bust a bubble for a moment. First impressions is not always authentic expression of self. Let me give you an example. Now, if someone already has studied you and understands what you like and what you don't like, what ticks you off the right or the wrong way, they have the tendency of getting to you faster and better than any other person. You know why? They know the right things to say, they know the right buttons to press. So, what usually happens is that when we choose to live our life through the lens of selective distortion, we begin to make wrong decisions. And I say wrong decisions, why? Because we don't have all the facts. We don't have all the facts, and that's why we reach a conclusion to say, oh, this friend that wasn't available to come and pick me up from the airport doesn't take me seriously. Oh, this guy, he's tall, he's handsome, he smells nice, therefore, he most likely will be a good partner. She is smart, she's intelligent, she says all the right things, therefore, we will be very good romantic partners. My boss is hard on me because he doesn't like me. He just wants to frustrate me. Now, what begins to happen is that you're making wrong decisions. Your decisions are clouded by a fraction of the part of people, that you see. and you're not really seeing people for who they are. And this is one of the biggest illusion of social media. What you see about people's life is just a fraction of who they truly are. As a matter of fact, a well curated fraction of who they are. Very few people are actually who they say they are outside of the media. I saw a particular documentary a couple of weeks ago and I was shocked. I had to go on social media to, maybe do some more research around this person. And I'm like, wow, this just further re-emphasizes the importance of not just accepting things or people at surface level. Now, another thing that eventually happens is that your self image also begins to suffer. Now, if you fail at something, and there is a presupposition that I've always loved, and I heard this first in class while I was training, and it was there are no failures, only feedback. Now, that has been one of the guiding principle for me as I go through my journey in life. And when something happens that appears to be a setback, the definition that I give to it is that this is a feedback to me. What can I learn about it? What is this trying to tell me? But when you operate from the perspective of selective distortion, what you begin to see is that you see your life through a eye of a needle, which is, oh, I have failed and therefore I'm a total failure. And you carry shame and you wear it like a cloth. Take for example, one of the biggest example around this is how society treats single parents and single mothers especially, because you know if for example they got pregnant for a guy, and then there's that assumption that they are quite irresponsible. And this is one of the fear of social acceptance that drives young women into marrying people who should have just been fathers to their children and now they are husbands to them. The fact that you got pregnant for someone doesn't officially make them or shouldn't really define them as your husband. But because we look through the eyes of selective distortion, which is, oh, I've gotten pregnant, my life is over, right? I've gotten pregnant, nobody would want me anymore. Therefore, I have no other choice than to eventually end up with this person. And what happens is that years down the line, you see that you're miserable in the relationship is not working, and you're like, God, I don't know why I got into this. The reason is because you put shame on as a cloth. And at the heart of it, selective distortion is the driving factor for it. Now, another thing is that your world becomes so small. So small. One of the things that I love about traveling is how much education you get from just seeing the world through other people's lens. You see how far removed you are from the reality of other people. You see how what is in quote acceptable within your climb is foreign and strange to other people. That's the beauty really of exposing your mind through books, through interactions, through travel, because it helps to widen the scope of your thinking. Because what selective distortion does for you, because you're looking through a tiny hole into the world, or you're looking at someone through the eye of a needle, you begin to just think that every single thing that comes to define that person is just through that, for lack of a better word, small fraction of knowledge that you have about that person. And the thing is, you end up resenting people, you end up judging people, all because you focus on just a part of who they are. And you remember I had said that people can be in unresourceful state and resourceful state. And quite frankly, we are all there. If you take an audit of all the people that have experienced you in your life, not all of them have experienced you at your best state. If you have been always at your best state, then voila, congratulations for you. You have reached the highest point of humanity. But, for every single one of us, there's been at some point where I'm like, you're not in your best behavior and people experience you. Will it really be fair if that person were to judge you by who they have met? So now, if they are not going to judge you by who they have met, then why then should you? So the thing is, perspective is really very important. Learning to zoom out of the situation and see the whole path and not just a smaller path. And one of the ways to really do this is give people the benefit of the doubt. And when I say give people the benefit of the doubt, I'm not saying that you should allow people to hurt you and hurt you and hurt you before you take action. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Giving people the benefit of the doubt is, let's take for example, someone who you're just meeting for the first time acts in a way that you don't like or that you didn't expect them to. And there are chances that you may meet this person again, or you may not even meet this person again, right? You are left with two choices. You can either think, oh, I think this person is quite irresponsible, or you can say, maybe this person is just under stress and I just happen to be at the receiving end. While I don't excuse what he or she has done, I can understand that this person is not necessarily a bad person. They're just in a difficult situation and they don't know how to maybe respond or react, right? Or take, for example, when you catch yourself thinking, I like this guy or I like this lady, oh, we will be a perfect match, or this person really did not greet me or say hello to me, right? Stop and ask yourself, what additional evidence do I have that supports this thinking? What evidence can I possibly get tomorrow that can go against this particular thought I'm having about this person now? Chances are that the evidence will be mixed and not absolute, right? But these simple questions help you to really dig deeper, to really understand, am I just making up ideas based on just a tiny aspect of this person? Am I qualifying this person with just a part of who they are, right? And what this does is it helps you to make sound and objective decisions. In the previous episode, I talked about trusting and avoiding betrayals. You probably want to listen to that episode because I went deep into how to put measures in place to ensure that you don't just throw your trust around, because trust really is not a gift, it must be earned. So the question you want to ask yourself is, this person I'm interacting with right now, this person I'm head over heels with, this person that, I have come to fall in love with, is this person truly compatible with me? Right? Another thing is, instead of collapsing, the whole into a particular part, try this. Take, for example, you can say, um, this person, right, didn't greet me this morning or didn't say hello, or this person wasn't being nice to me, right? But in many other ways, this person has actually been a supportive friend. This person may be all nice and sweet and calm now, but if this person is in a difficult situation, I'm sure this person will crack under pressure. What you're trying to do is you are trying to shift your mind from a one way kind of thinking to exploring multiple possibilities. Now, people are not good or bad, they are just mixed, just like you, right? They are not, and this is a very hard concept to grasp, and I understand it because every day we go out to see people who hurt us, who are just downright, I don't want to use the word, right? But the ability to take a pause and say, is this person inherently bad or is this person inherently good? there's a concept of pathological lies, right? And I'll probably explore that in another episode. But I'm talking about creating possibilities. And I started this episode by saying one of the best things you can do for yourself in dealing with things like this is giving people the benefit of the doubt. Now, are there ways where you can put in measures to ensure that you're not just putting in or just giving people the benefit of the doubt all the time? Yes, by all means, right? Like I said again, I'll touch a bit about it at the end of today's episode, but if you really want to deep dive into this, listen to Trusting and Avoiding Betrayals. I went deep into that particular concept. Now, the last thing that I'll just like to refer to as we bring this episode to a close is every time you reframe a thought, right? Every time you challenge selective distortions and you replace it with a broader perspective, what you're doing is that you are training your brain in a new way to think. You know, when we talk about behavior change follows a sequence. Your thoughts lead to your feelings lead to your actions. Now, when you change your thoughts, you will change how you feel and change how you behave. So, the more times you are able to challenge selective distortion as a thinking pattern, you begin to change that particular feeling that you have of just trusting and just excitement without moderation. And then your behavior begins to become what you personally may refer to as a matured way of interacting with people. And the prefrontal cortex really is an important, powerful part of the brain, and it is responsible for rational thinking. And it often overrides the amygdala, which is quick to jump into conclusions, right? And this is really, really what some of the things that we do in therapy. It's not really about instantly becoming positive. Nah, it's really about gradually training your brain to look at things from a completely different perspective, to zoom out, to always ask the question, is there a part of this that I'm not looking at? Is there an aspect? Is there a way? Is there a different way to think about this? Is there another angle to this? Is there a completely different perspective to this? Now, because I also, play in the space of human resources within organization, one of the things I have heard more times than I can remember is how badly, managers have treated direct reports. And I remember this particular story, but I won't quote it word for word just so that I keep confidentiality. But the central theme of it was that, this particular person told me how, the boss was for a couple of days, was just ignoring, this particular person. And when this person came to me, this person was like, I'm not sure what I did wrong, but this my boss just doesn't like me, right? I'm not really sure about it. I mean, this my boss just didn't like me. And as we engaged in that conversation, I remember asking and saying, is there a possibility that there is something else happening within this period in your boss's life that is taking all of their attention and causing them stress? Have you attempted to maybe just go and sit down and have a one-on-one with your boss to just ask if everything is really okay in their personal life? And lo and behold, this person came back to me weeks after. We just ran into each other randomly, and it's like, thank you so much for that thing that you said. I had a conversation with my boss and I realized that he had lost someone very special, and that entire experience took its toll on him. Now you can see the importance of verifying and not just taking the assumption. I've been there too as well. I used to have a boss who, when he's walking down the hallway, you can greet him and he wouldn't even respond to you. And many years ago, and then at a point I was like, I don't know what's wrong with this person. I think this person is just proud and just doesn't like to relate with people To my utmost surprise, I had the opportunity to work directly with this person sometime down the line. And this person was one of the smartest, interesting people that I've come to work with that I learned a lot from, as a matter of fact. So you can see how, even within the office space, we can rob ourselves of the opportunity to learn and work with smart, brilliant people when we really allow selective distortion to take, the order of the day in our lives. For example, because you have a perception about someone, when you're put in a particular project team with that person, "Like, I don't want to work with that person. I don't like that person." Or you probably got secondhand information about this person from another person. There's one advice that one of my senior friend gave me that has really helped me to shape my mind. Now you can see that all of this information, like I talked about, is helping to rewire your brain and reshape your brain. He said, for every time you meet someone, regardless of what you have heard or known about them, give yourself the opportunity to meet them afresh and meet them for yourself. I never forgot. And this has been the cornerstone of my relationship with people. When you tell me something about someone, I file it away somewhere. I try as much as possible not to even put it at the forefront of my mind, but I just file it away somewhere as data. And I'm like, okay, I've heard you. All right. And I try to meet this person for myself. I assume that I don't know anything about this person. You realize that there is a possibility, a high possibility, and in many cases, it always turns out true that this person was just in a bad situation and acted differently. So, really, catch yourself thinking about these thoughts. And if you can, when you journal, write it down and challenge it. And basically ask yourself, is this really true? Why am I thinking this way? And then take away sources of doubt, right? Take away absolutes. One of the challenges I have, when I interact with people is I'm very averse to interacting with people who use absolutes. Because when you say, "You will never do this, I will never do this," like absolutes are quite dangerous because you are speaking from a position, and as a matter of fact, the amount of information that you have, not putting into consideration the possibility of a different context, a future information, and all of that. And this is where I'm also very careful, because as someone who speaks and somebody who shares information that has helped a lot of people, I always try as much as possible to challenge my thinking. Why am I thinking this way? I try to sow seeds of doubt and I debate with myself in my head a lot because I'm trying to refine how I am thinking, update my thinking faculty, update my software so that I can have a more informed and an updated version, to be able to share with my beloved fam every single time. And the benefit of this is that it makes me a better person. It makes me more empathetic. It opens up my perspective about life. I remember while I was teaching a class at the Institute of Counseling in Nigeria, one of the questions I would usually ask my counselors in training, I beg your pardon, was a very interesting question that if you get this kind of client, what would you do? It's a very interesting discourse. I almost always ask it in class and I begin to hear perspective. I begin to hear perspective. The aim and objective of that question is to try to help my students to open up their thinking, to ask themselves, if I'm in this kind of situation, what will I do? And then at the end of the day, right, I want to leave you with, this very little reflection. And I want you to really think about someone in your life. And I would say someone that you do not like specifically. And think about what was it that this person did that made you dislike them. Now, I want you to probably think about somebody who did something, maybe just a one-off event, not a series of events, right? Maybe this person just did something one-off and you don't like them. Ask yourself, right? What else is true about this person outside of this information? or this thing that I know about this person, what other aspects of this person is true? What else is true about this person? What if that one act was done in their state of unresourcefulness? One of the hardest things to do is to think about possibilities when you're upset. When someone does something that you don't like, the easiest thing to do is just to define that situation quickly and move on. But the ability to take a step back and ask, what am I not seeing? That really is the hallmark of this popular concept called emotional intelligence. So, I hope that this episode has done something for you, or that you have enjoyed this particular episode. And till I come your way again, always remember, be kind to yourself. And I'm rooting for you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Until I see you again, cheers.